Hey, welcome to Life in the Leadership Lane. I'm your host, Bruce Waller, where I get to talk to leaders that are making a difference in the workplace and in our community. What did they do to get started? And what are they doing to stay there? And we have another special guest. I'm getting to talk to Vicki Rose today. She is the CEO and president of Vicki Rose and Associates. I've known Vicki for a very long time, and I'm so excited to have her on the show. How you doing, Vicki?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Bruce, and so honored to be talking with you today.
I'm so honored to talk to you as well. And I'm so excited. I always like to start the show kind of reflecting on when I met my guests or maybe when they came into my path. But for you, it was Dallas HR. And I want to say it was around 2006, 7, 8, whenever I started getting involved as a volunteer. And we met through Dallas HR. Do you remember that?
I absolutely do, and I think that's pretty much when I got involved as well. And I think I was an ambassador, and you may have been an ambassador at the same time. I can't remember exactly, but I think we just we're people, and so I think we were both buzzing around the room and introducing ourselves to everyone and enjoying the moment of being with all these wonderful professionals.
I think Lynn Stewart probably got us both involved. You know, she was the queen of ambassadors back in the day. But no, I remember that. And I always thought, yeah, was very impressed by you and your presence and the work you were doing. And so as I, started looking at my list, I'm like, I have to have Vicki Rose on the show. And so I'm so excited to talk today. Hey, for those who don't know you, would you mind sharing just a brief highlight of Vicki Rose and Associates? Like what does your company do and how do you serve your customers?
So I've had my company since about 2008. So we're coming up on what, 15, oh gosh, 15 years now.
Yeah.
And it came about sort of organically. My children were graduating from high school, and I was like, I finally had time to venture off and try something on my own. So I had the great blessing of having many long-term relationships with clients here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And so really kind of built my business around some of those relationships. And so what I focus on is truly those long-term relationships where I understand my client, I understand their business, and I support them with their hiring needs. And so that can be accounting and finance, that can be human resources, that can be pretty much anything except for that IT piece. I have partners that I work with when it comes to those types of placements, not my specialty, but I have done some unique placements because I understand their line of business. So even in the relocation industry, I've worked within that, helping with consultants and some specialized positions. So I have the flexibility to build my services around the needs of my clients.
I love that. And I know you've reached out over the years when you've had something in relocation, said, hey, who do you know? And when you talk about building relationships, I can definitely see that. Well, we're going to talk leadership today. We're going to talk recruiting, what's going on out there in the market. But I want to start with the Vicki Rose story. Like, I know you, but I bet you there's still some things I don't know about you. I would love for you to share, like, where did you grow up and how in the world did you get into recruiting and leading your own company like you are today?
It's kind of a funny story. So I actually am the daughter of an Air Force pilot.
Hmm,
So you probably didn't know that, did you?
I did
My
not know
father was
that.
in the Air Force for 27 years. I'm still blessed to have him. He's 91, fought in Vietnam, so I'm very proud of my dad.
Hmm.
But we moved pretty much every year of my life. I went to 5 elementary schools, 2 junior highs, and 3 high schools. So there's a lot of moving, which probably has led me to this relationship building type personality that I have, right? Because you move and you have to make friends quickly, and there you go. So I continued that lifestyle with marrying another Air Force pilot. And yeah, so we moved immediately to Okinawa, and then we lived in England, and then we ended up in Las Vegas. And we were building a home there. And I thought, oh gosh, I've got to get some work because I didn't have children at the time. I thought I just need to do something to keep myself busy. So I went to Kelly Services, so, which back in the day, Kelly was the company, right? I think I did 2 temporary assignments for them, and they said, "How would you like to help us out in the office?" So I started off on the operations side of Kelly Services many years ago, and then somewhere along the line, someone said, "Well, do you want to try selling?" Which I had no clue what I was doing, running around with my little business cards. And they were like, "Go ask people about their Dun and Bradstreet listing." Oh yeah, like they're going to give me their financials. You know, a little girl walks in with her business cards. but it was quite an experience. So that just, I mean, it wasn't a planned process to go into the staffing industry. Really fell into it, and so from there I ended up in the Dallas area, and I unfortunately went through divorce. So I had two little children, learning how to support myself and figuring out what am I going to do. Well, that was the one thing that I knew, and I knew it would. I would engage with people throughout the metroplex because I knew no one. I had just moved here, had two little kiddos, and had no friends, no really established relationships. So it's such a good way for me to get started in the business. I started off selling over in the Fort Worth area,
Mm.
which is difficult if you're not from Fort Worth, but started off in that area, built lots of relationships there. My company then moved me to the Dallas area, continued on in that realm in selling in the Dallas market. Had someone that recruited me away, offered me twice the salary, said, come on, join us. So
You're
I
like,
moved to that company.
yes.
Yeah, and really then it went from there. It went from a small privately owned little company till we were purchased by more of a national company that I absolutely loved. It was called Office Specialist.
Mm.
And Office Specialist then was purchased by Ronstadt. So I became part of an international company. And I ended up selling very large on-site type programs throughout the Dallas Fort Worth area primarily. I did then move to a more of a leadership role, and I had several offices that I managed for Ronstadt. But at the time, I had teenagers, so it became a little
Mm.
bit much for me to try to
Mm.
balance employees and teenagers by myself. So I took a step back, and that's when I went to High Profile. So I was with them for 6 years, and I was
Mm.
strictly selling for them and worked 4 days a week, so I could be around to monitor things. I just want to say I didn't plan this career. I've
Mm.
just fallen into it, and I love it. I love what I do. I can't even tell you the high that I get when I find that perfect person for my client and I know it's the perfect fit. And I love it for both parties.
Well, I can feel your passion and your energy just telling me that story. It's interesting how I would say most of us, whenever we go into a career, we really don't know what we're going to be doing. A lot of it isn't planned. My daughter went to school for nutrition and she is a nutritionist. So she's one of the outliers, but
She is.
I went to school for business and little did I didn't know anything about relocation. Hey, so first of all, thank you for your father serving. That's fantastic. I love that. My grandfather was in the Navy, but I gotta ask you just this real quick. You talked about moving around a lot. How hard was that? Like, because you're talking about building long-term relationships, but you didn't have long-term relationships, and we didn't have social media back when you were going to school, right? How hard was
Yeah.
that?
It wasn't as difficult until you get into those high school years, right?
Mm,
And that's where I would say it was more difficult because there's so many things that you look back on and you think, wow, I maybe I could have been a this or a that, but
yeah,
but you were never anywhere long enough to really be part of anything.
yeah.
So um, I think you probably know that I have a passion for tennis now. So
Hmm.
I think that allows me to be a part of an organization, just like Dallas HR was a way for me to build relationships and have those long-term relationships because I did not have those. And you're right. I mean, I still have someone that I knew in ninth grade. We've never seen each other since ninth grade, but we still stay in touch with each other.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those, but I did not grow up with that kind of long-term relationship. So
I think that's one of the things I admire about you and others that are, living life in the leadership lane. Like like you've gone through a lot of struggles to get to where you are today. And you brought up tennis just now. I mean, people don't know you're an avid tennis player, pretty good tennis player. And I've yet to get out on the tennis court with you, Vicki. I'm wanting to do that. But I want to ask you this question. And little did you know how much moving around and going from job to job is going to help you for what you're doing today to help others. But I want to ask you, and I like to ask this question: were there some people that helped you along the way? I always like to talk about mentors in our life, but were there some people that helped you get to where you are?
it's so interesting because I've given that a lot of thought. And of course, my father,
Mm,
absolutely, right? Because
hmm.
and I'm so blessed, like I said, to have both my parents. They've always been there, backed me through the ups and downs, right, of
Yeah.
anything. And I think Greg Schweitzer, that was the gentleman that gave me that opportunity to leave the one company and said, I value you. You pick your territory. I'm going to double your salary. He saw whatever it was that I had. He saw
Mm,
that gift or whatever you want to call it, which you have to give him so much credit because I felt so uplifted by
mm,
him. Then when we were sold to office specialists, this is kind of a little funny story. The gentleman that was the president of the company, his name was Larry Dorito, and he came to town. And I'm not going to lie, I'm a visual person. I'm a salesperson, so I have kind of piles of paper everywhere. It's just my personality, right? I have to see
right.
it. And I think someone in the office must have complained a little bit that maybe Vicki wasn't, putting all of her paperwork away or doing all of her paperwork. And he came to the office and he looked at the numbers and he told everybody, leave her alone. Leave her alone, let her do her thing. And I just thought, wow. And that's just people like that saw what my natural gift was, instead of trying to put me in a peg in a hole that wasn't
Mm,
necessarily going to be my natural talent. They valued me for what I was, and so I valued them in return as my leader,
mm,
right? Because I knew that they were going to take me in a path that led to my success, and that's exactly what happened, both of those. I will say, when I started my own company, I had a couple of clients that were believers in me because I really just kind of was winging it. Thought, I'm just going to do this, and they were so encouraging. One was Stacy Giles, and I don't know if you've talked with her yet, but she's amazing. She's an amazing HR leader at Exeter Finance now.
okay.
She was so encouraging to me. Believed in me, still does. And anytime I talk to her, Cliff Edwards is another one. I don't know if you know Cliff from Thomas Edwards Group. We used to meet every Monday. He didn't like Mondays. So we would meet on Mondays and I'd lift him up for the week and he'd lift me up and give me that encouragement. And he was the one that taught me to overcome a lot of my fear. Because when you start your own business, there's a lot of fear. Am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be successful? Will I be able to support my family? And he was the one that said, Vicki, when you have those big wins, go reward yourself. Do something for yourself, whether it's go to the spa or buy a piece of jewelry or go on a shop, whatever it may be. Do something to, if not, it'll become a drag on you, right?
Mm-hmm.
But instead, it was uplifting, and I would go, "Whoa! Now I get a prize."
Mm,
So I thought he was an amazing mentor as well. And those are kind of the key people that I can think of. On the friendship side, I had one lady when I went through my divorce and had little kiddos, right? She was the person that said, slow down, you're trying to fix your whole life. Do
mm.
one step at a time, one step at a time. We're here with you, God's with you. Just do your one step at a time. So that was huge advice.
Oh my goodness. That is
Yeah.
that's incredible. Just as you think, about all the people that you've been surrounded by that have shaped you. And I love how you talked about how your boss saw value in you and didn't try to put you in a box. I think that's so important, even for today. I even hear top leaders talk about the importance of valuing people and exploiting their strength zones, right? Don't look for the bad. I think I saw something you had posted recently that said, you look for the good. And I always like to say, when you look for the good, you'll see the good. And that is so huge. And then having people around you by saying, hey, hold on just a second. Don't try to do it all at once, right? Just try. And we
Absolutely.
just need people like that. Let
Yeah.
me ask you this. I always like to ask this too, and that is, I mean, you started out. I mean, you've been doing this for a long time,
I
and you
have.
started out doing this. And was there a moment when you found your lane, where you found your, like, you know what, this is my purpose, this is my calling, I'm good at what I do, and I love what I do? Was there a moment?
I truly believe it was when Greg hired me and he had that confidence in me. And
Mm,
once he did that and showed me that he valued me, I mean, every time I would have a report, right, that came through, he'd come in. I mean, one time he jumped up on my desk and tap danced, right? And it was like, oh my gosh, gave me a little reward. And to me, that meant so much. First of all, that he recognized me.
mm,
But I started recognizing, you know what? I'm good at this. I started on the operations side, which I love talking to people, but I loved learning about businesses and how I could help them become successful. And I just knew that was my natural gift, was to connect with people. And I feel that that is a gift for me. I don't connect with everyone, obviously, none of us can, but I try really hard.
Mm.
And I feel like that was really when I realized this is it for me. I can help people that are looking for a job. I can help people in their companies, help them grow. I love seeing people like Felicia Taylor, who I met when she was an intern. Okay. And now here she is an HR leader. I've
Hmm.
seen her through that process and stayed in touch with her through that process. And even now I get goosebumps just thinking about how I've seen all these people become such amazing, wonderful human beings and taking care of their team. So yeah, I think that was really truly it. I think that and I think I sold a huge deal one time, a long time ago, the Associates, which is now Citigroup. And through all those relationships, I have watched all those people go to different companies, become successful HR leaders, and I love it. So yeah, I just think that was when I knew this was my calling for
Yeah,
sure.
that just feels good. Lisa, I know Lisa and she's phenomenal. When you talk about that, I thought about my boss and how, in the past I've had some bosses that are, hey, where's your reports? And what are
Mhm.
you doing? And when you coming in? But my the boss today, he's more of a, like you talked about, he's an encourager or a cheerleader. Yes, the numbers are important, obviously, but he's there to help. And it's amazing when you are around those types of people, all of a sudden you just want to run through a brick wall for them because they just lift you up and give you so much confidence. And that belief is incredible. I want to talk leadership here, but you posted something and I gave you some questions, but I was just looking at your LinkedIn. And I just want to ask you about this.
Sure.
And you posted here, I'm not sure if you shared something or if you posted, but it says, what's one job seeking advice you wish everyone knew? And I thought that was very fascinating. So I wrote these down and I want you to just comment on this if you don't mind. Or you said, you are best champion. You just got to start the process. Don't procrastinate. You got to develop your network and you got to believe. And what really triggered me to bring this up now is because you just talked about belief. Because I feel like that's what Greg did for you. He just
Mhm.
like instilled belief in you. What's your thoughts around best job seeking advice you wish everyone knew? Is there one thing that does stand out there? I know I just listed these four, but any thoughts around that?
Well, oh gosh, there's so many different ways to approach that, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think being part of the links group in the past and watching over the years when we had the dips in the economy and different things,
Mm-hmm.
I've always talked about how critical it is to continue with your network, and I think
Mm-hmm.
so many people use that network when they're looking for a job, but then they get situated in their job and they let all that go. And I don't think you should let that go. You've got to keep those relationships fresh, right? And keep
Yeah.
top of mind. And so when someone's actually looking for a job, I definitely encourage them to reach out to their network. I encourage them to reach out to their friends, previous employers. There's so many things to do, but I think the biggest thing is believe in yourself
Mm-hmm.
and know your value, know your worth. Because when you go on that interview, you're going to be confident. You're going to be the person that you're supposed to be. And I think that also understanding what is going to be valuable to that company, right? And
Mm-hmm.
understanding what is that leadership looking for. So I think, but the biggest thing is take that first step, get going. Don't be afraid to reach out. And I tell people, I'm so glad you're reaching out to me, but there's lots of recruiters in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. We all have different relationships. Reach out to a bunch of us. Just keep building that network, keep working, keep believing in yourself, and keep that process going and make sure that you have a plan, right? You've got to have some sort of a plan.
I think that goes back to what we were talking about. When you're surrounded by great people, just good things happen, and so you can't stop doing that. And I know the past couple of years, I want to talk about this. It was really hard for a lot of people, and it's still hard for some. And the biggest thing is because all of a sudden we started we had to network in a different way, right? We weren't all meeting at Starbucks like we were before, or going to these association events and different things like that. And I would have people reach out to me on LinkedIn and say, hey, can I have 15 minutes? And I would give it to them because they just started, right? They just stepped out. And it's been so different. I want to ask you, first question I want to ask you is, I always talk about leadership, and when someone says, "Hey, Vicki, what's leadership to you?" How would you respond to that?
Leadership is that ability, in my opinion, to not only lead your organization, but to lead your people, right? And to lead your people, I think you have to understand your people. I think you have to have empathy. I think you have to have the ability to understand that not everyone's going to be the same, not everyone has the same
Mm,
strength. To be and to have that amazing ability to bring those teams together, right? And somehow get the most out of everyone, but also looking out for them and making sure that they have growth in their lives and not being necessarily, this can depend, not necessarily being intimidated by them, but seeing their value and how they're supporting you and your goals as a leader.
I love how you shared that, and I wrote down understanding, empathy, and not everyone is going to be the same. And I would
Mhm.
think that would be really important for you as you're helping companies find talent, and you're also helping the candidate get placed where they need to go when it comes to that. So I would think understanding, having empathy, and knowing that, hey, they're not the same. I got to find the area to show them what I value, right?
Absolutely, that sweet spot for that
Hmm.
particular. And so many times, people don't even understand what their value is. And so I
Mm.
mentor a lot of people, and especially not always young people, but a lot of young people I talk to, recent college graduates that are looking for new opportunities, and just kind of talking through with them. Just take everything away from the table. What drives you? What makes you happy? And I know, work is not necessarily always about happiness, but we do spend a lot of time at work.
Mhm.
So I think
Mhm.
it's important to do things that you are passionate about or that bring you that joy. And being in a culture and an environment that's going to foster that. So I think there's some wonderful people in our community that are great at building those types of cultures, and I love working with those types of companies because obviously it makes my job much easier when I can find talent and say, let me tell you, I've had placed people there that have been there for 20 years. I
Mm.
can tell you about their leadership team. And that's why it's so important for me to have that relationship with my clients so that I really understand what will be a good fit. Hard skills are easy, soft skills are difficult.
Mm.
So if really understanding those people skills and those soft skills to make that right fit for the client. Yes.
Yeah, that's so good. I was thinking about how, you're like me, whenever you're working with a client that believes in the importance of building relationships, it's so much more joyful to work with them because you're going to have challenges. You're going to have challenges along the way. We all do, but you work through them together. You also, one other LinkedIn post, you actually shared this, and it said, you commented on it, and you said, building long-term relationships is a key to success and happiness. I want to ask you this question. And the question is, how do you go about building these long-term relationships and creating this, this happiness? And the reason why I want to ask that is because there's some listeners out there who are probably doing, they may not be in your industry or they may be, but when you're in recruiting, sometimes you talk to people for the first time, or how do you go about building those long-term business relationships? Any thoughts around that?
Yeah, so I think there's so much to be said for listening and uncovering things about people. And some of us are more gifted at that than others, and I understand that. But maybe not making it so much about you as it is about them.
Mm,
I think that's a huge key. I think great questioning, trying to understand what drives that particular person, how you can help them become more successful, I think is very key. And I truly just like people. So I think it's just a gift, right? I really love learning about people, about their
Mm.
lives. I love learning about their companies. So I think having a vested interest in the individual, but also in kind of what their life goals and their career goals are, and their company goals. So
That's the Dale Carnegie 101 right there is whenever you said, you talked about listening, being curious, asking questions, but also looking from the other person's viewpoints and learning more about them. I'm right there with you on that. I think that is one of the biggest keys is whenever you are not focused about your job, your agenda, what's going on with you, but you start like leaning in and learning more about the other person. I want to ask you this. Where does that come from? Because there's some people listening right now going, okay, I'm writing all these, I'm taking these notes. I guarantee you people out there, they got pens and paper and they're taking notes. But that, I think that is one of the keys. Like, how do you do that? And I think one of the ways you mentioned earlier is, maybe questioning might be a good starting point.
I think that, yes, definitely questioning, trying to find that commonality. And
Yeah.
also when I meet with people, especially like those first few times that I meet with them, I'm really not a hardcore salesperson.
Mm,
I am here to be your partner and to help you. So if I can help you, please tell me how I can help you. But I'm not going to say, okay, give me that order and let's get going. And I'm going to throw a body at you. That's just not how I operate.
yeah.
It takes time. So I guess I have some patience.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
right. To make sure that I'm building that relationship and taking that time to really understand that person, to know more about them, to know more about what makes them tick. And hopefully we're connecting and they're wanting to then know more about me. And I don't really make it all about business.
Let me ask you this. Last couple of years, have been really, really challenging. Have you had to like shift the way you work? We were just talking offline about, people are now working a little bit differently. Have you had to shift the way you work and do things?
Absolutely. So, kind of funny story, sort of. During COVID, of course, I had really no business. I mean, it was just people weren't hiring.
Yeah.
It was just difficult to even get in touch with people. I think people were probably doing their own thing, maybe depressed. I don't know, but we all had
Right.
our own thing.
Yeah.
So I actually wanted, but I am such a people person, and my kids are grown, so I was like, oh, I'm sitting in my house thinking, oh, I got to go do something. So I have friends that have a beautiful plant nursery in Coppell. I went and worked in their nursery so that I could see people every day. And I found beauty in it because of the flowers and I mean, I was their best salesperson. We were ripping stuff off the walls. Everyone was fixing up their yards. And it was fun for me because I was seeing people that I knew and I was meeting new people and making connections. So that truly helped me get over that hump. But then I had the reality of, oh, you got to get your business going in, lady.
Right.
So I was very blessed in the fact that one of my very long-term relationships that I've had, they relocation, they were hiring like crazy. And so they said, Vicki, we need your help. I'm like, oh, this is perfect. It got me stirred up again. I got my juices
Yeah.
flowing again. And truly have been a huge blessing to me because and I said, well, as long as I can balance this with getting my business started, I'm happy to help you. So I helped them with hiring here in California, and I was doing my hiring, and it just really got me pumped again, rejuvenated because I have been doing this a long time.
Right.
But once I got that fire burning again, I had a great year last year. It was amazing. How have I changed? I think last year because I got that fire
Yeah.
rejuvenated, and I am longer in the tooth
Hmm.
and further along in my career. I have found that I really want to have balance in my life now. And this is where, I mentioned tennis earlier. I really try to do part work, part play because I don't have the
Hmm.
kids at home anymore. So it's my first time in my life. I've had a little bit of what Vicki wants and what Vicki enjoys. And so and I love my work and I love my tennis, and that's my social outlet. So I think that's really important to have some balance in your life, or I could sit here, which I did for a good part of last year, 24/7, just working, working, working. I thought, nope, slow it down some.
Oh, no, that's fantastic. And I think a lot of people want that balance. And but there's also a balance between having that balance, and also you still got to produce results, right? You still got to get the work done. And I think part of that is the challenge for a lot of people is like, hey, I'm right now, and especially some people that, they've gone back to the workplace or maybe they're working from home, but they're doing more work and they're having like, I think it's like blurred boundaries. And I just, how have you been able to find that balance? I guess, like you said, you have tennis, but do you, are you like do you plan a week ahead? How do you go about finding that balance? And I'm asking this question because I want people that are listening that may be in a situation where they're like, oh my gosh, I've got to find some balance. How have you been able to do that?
Yeah, I think it's super important for all of us because we've got to have time to rejuvenate and to keep that energy going and that passion going for your job. For me personally, yes, I do schedule out ahead of time. The fortunate part about my recreational side is I'm on many teams, and so I know ahead of time what I'll be doing and not be doing. So, but there are many evenings that I work, so that's the beauty in having my own company is I have that flexibility to be able to, I can work from 8 till 4 and then go do my tennis match or whatever the case may be and then come home and work again until 10:30 at night. So I find that balance in varying times of the year. I have a little bit more towards one side than the other, but definitely have everything scheduled out.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I've shared this story a long time ago. I was playing golf with he was a global vice president of human resources. And he was sharing a story about how he had played all these golf courses. And I'm sitting here just thinking to myself, you're like a top level leader. You're very busy. How do you have time for golf? And he said, so I asked him the question and he said, I schedule it. And it's like what you're talking about. Hey, you know what? I schedule the high priorities, right? So the high priority could be a customer call, but it could also be, hey, I'm going to get out during this time and I'm going to play tennis or golf or do whatever that is. And I schedule that and then work around that schedule. I love that. Hey, let me ask you this. So you mentioned you're in a different season, as am I. Right. My kids have all graduated.
We have grandbabies.
Yes, I have some grandbabies.
Yes.
What continues to drive you?
That is the $1 million question, isn't it? I don't know. I have a natural joy for life, and I'm very fortunate to have that. I would say probably my family more than anything, right? My children, my grandchildren. I'm very, like I said, fortunate to have my kiddos. And then, I'm driven by my work and I enjoy what I do. Um, I'm just blessed with that energy level. My friends laugh at me and I'm like, oh my gosh, how are you doing all this stuff? I'm like, I don't know. I don't. And my dad's like that. My dad still plays golf at 91. So I have some of that's just my genes, I guess, right? So I'm just a goer and a doer, and I always have been in pretty much all of our families like that. So we just kind of people goers.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you definitely have a lot of energy. I want to ask you a couple more questions before we shift off here. And the first question I want to ask is for those that are listening that might be, they need to hire some people. What's a sign that maybe they're doing it in-house and they need some help? What's a sign that they might call someone to help them, a company like yours? Any thoughts around that?
I think the biggest thing is, especially in today's very challenging market, is you've got to have someone that has that ability to go after those passive candidates. So those are candidates that are not necessarily looking for an opportunity, but hopefully the recruiter can, through relationships and knowing people, can find that needle in that haystack person, right? And so much of that is timing. I mean, I had that happen last week where I was reaching out to people and someone said, oh my gosh, I was laid off last week. Who would have known, right? So I think that's key because I think corporate recruiters tend to post things and wait for people to come to them. Where external recruiters like myself, we go out and find those people. We're going to go and search for that talent for our clients. So I think that's a huge key to it. Absolutely.
That's a good point. I like that a lot. So you can help do some of the heavy lifting behind the scenes work for them. Hey, let me ask you this question. And this question is for those candidates out there, and we're hearing it's a candidate driven market right now.
Oh, yeah.
For those candidates out there, any tips you might share for someone that either A is thinking about their next or B, they're in the process of a search now? Any things that you've seen that have been successful for candidates?
Well, I think it's definitely a candidate market. So if they're at all wondering or thinking, it never hurts to explore.
Okay.
It doesn't mean you have to do anything, but it certainly doesn't hurt to explore opportunities. And so I always encourage people, why not keep again, networking, keep your world open.
Mm,
Now, if you're perfectly happy, I'm not encouraging anybody to say, go look for a new job. But if you are wanting that next step and you're not getting it, and you hopefully have done the right things by going to your leadership and saying, I'm ready, could you look at these, here's how I'm contributing to your company. Here's how I'm adding value. Do you feel I am worth this next step? And if you're not getting what you need, then this is when you move on, right? But I think in the world of the Great Resignation, which I know we're going to discuss, it's difficult. It's for my clients. I think it's tougher on their side. You have to move quickly. You just cannot do the stalling and the waiting and maybe somebody better will come along. It's just not that kind of market. So if you find that talent that's got the skills you're looking for, I encourage anyone to move quickly, because they're going to be
quickly.
gone.
Yeah. Two words, move quickly. I got that. I just wrote that down. Well, let me ask you this. And I did have this on my list that I wanted to talk to you about in the Great Resignation. Like, is that real?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's very real. I think we were all frozen in time. And I think there was fear. And I think people did not want to make a change. They were afraid. What if I leave? What if I can't find another job? What about my benefits? There were so many pieces to what was going on. And we didn't know how this was going to unfold, right? How long is it going to last? What's going to happen? And so I think all those people that were sitting there wondering and waiting and not sure, now they're like, whoa, let's go. They see the employment market is booming. We're in a great city for that because we're so diverse in industry. So I think that people are definitely exploring and moving around. Absolutely.
Do you, and I want to ask you this question for those listening. Are you seeing companies getting creative in their offers or their benefits or their pay? What are you seeing anything different there at all, or something you're like, I never thought I would see this?
I haven't seen it as much as I thought I would. I'm not, so I don't know if employers are, other than the remote piece of it, where maybe there's a hybrid or we'll allow them to continue. That's been a big deal, as I know you probably have seen. People still want to work remotely. And so my clients are like, no, we're going to start making it mandatory. You have to come back. And so I've had some amazing candidates that clients wanted to hire, and the candidate says, no, I'm just not going to go back to the office. And then the client has come back and said, well, what if you just come in one day a week? Okay, so that's the only creative piece that I've really seen on my side. Now could be other people that have seen some other things that I just haven't seen, but that has been the biggest piece at this point.
I love this. I'm so glad I got a chance to have you on, because I know there's some people out there listening that they may be hiring candidates right now, or they're looking for their next. And some of the information you've shared has been very, very helpful. Let me ask you this. I have one more question before we go to It's Time to Accelerate. And the question I always like to ask is, like, has there been some advice that you received? Maybe it was early in your career, late career. It was so good, you just find yourself sharing it with others.
I wish I had one nugget other than the put one foot in front of the other, right? I wish I had that perfect nugget. I only have one saying, and I'm not very good at following it, but it was from my grandmother. And I do use it occasionally. And it was least said, easiest mended. So think about that one. And it may not necessarily always be apropos to business, but it can be. Least said, easiest mended. And that's just been one I've stuck in my brain from my grandmother.
I love that.
Kind of some good advice.
Hey, grandmothers always have the best advice. I know mine did as well. And so I appreciate you sharing that. And I know
Yeah.
that people that are listening, you just never know what
Hmm.
someone says that just may like move them
Hmm.
forward. And so I appreciate you sharing that. I told you the time is going to go by fast. So we're going to go over to the section that's called "It's Time to Accelerate." I always like to ask some fun questions. First question I always like to ask, Vicki, would you rather read a book or listen to a podcast?
You're like, I don't have time to read a book. So definitely listen to a podcast.
Or
Yeah.
listen to an audible?
Yeah.
Hey, let me ask you this since we're on this topic. I always like to ask about, I was just reading something today is what just triggered this, and it was on the importance of personal development. And, me and you were both in our later seasons. I guess I'm not exactly sure how to say that. I'd like to say mid-career. My wife says, yeah, you just keep telling yourself that.
I know.
But do you continue to find ways to continue to develop as a leader? Like podcasts are one of those ways. In any other things you do to help with your development?
Yeah, well, I read every day. I mean, every morning is
Yeah.
a little bit about the news because I don't want it to get too negative for
Okay.
the day.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but I want to
Right.
know what's happening in our world.
Okay.
There's all kinds of groups that I follow on LinkedIn, and of course, as you
Like
know,
that.
I know we all do that. And so there's lots of great information. There's only so much time in a day, obviously. So I
Yeah.
do try. I love Brene Brown. I think she's
Yeah.
amazing, and she would say that we're in the unraveling stage of our life.
Hmm.
Which I thought
Yes.
was kind of
Like
interesting. So it's
that.
like we're kind of we've unraveled and we've done all these things. Now we've kind of taken some of it out that we don't need anymore, right?
Yeah.
And focusing on the stuff that's really important.
Exactly.
But
No, I
yeah,
like
but I think
that because
we're always learning, whether it's about people, through our relationships. And I meet so many business people through the club that I'm a member of. I feel like I'm learning from them all the time. I look, how
mm,
do they become successful? What made them successful? And they try to take those little nuggets along the way, right, and implement them.
I think you have an incredible gift, and that is the gift of looking through the other person's lens to lean in and just like so somebody told me this one time, and I had to really think about it for a while. And they said, Bruce, you're an unassuming leader. And I hadn't heard that term before. And then I started thinking about that. And the more I thought about it, it's because we don't go into a situation assuming we know anything. We just go in and we want to learn it. And so I would tag you as an unassuming leader as well, because you go in and you're just like, hey, I'm curious. I'm interested. I want to learn. I want to learn from you. And I just think that's an incredible gift that you have, and it probably is one of the reasons why you've been able to build the great relationships you've built.
Thank you, Bruce. That's so sweet of you to say that. And I would definitely say that about you.
Thank you. Oh my gosh.
Completely. You're such a
So
nice man.
okay, so let me ask you this, and I think I know the answer, but so when you're not working, what energizes you? Like what gets you on fire?
So definitely my tennis, but really my kids, my grandkids. I mean, oh my gosh, I
Mm,
cannot get enough of my little grandbabies.
I
So
love
and
that.
that well, you know how this is. It just is like the joy of your life, right? And just every little thing they do, I just am
Mm,
like, oh, such a blessing, such a
yes,
huge blessing. And
yes.
it's fun
Oh,
to watch your children become parents too. It's kind of
oh,
interesting.
right. That's very energizing too. You're like, huh, now you know what
Yeah,
I went through. Oh, that's
yeah.
fantastic. Let me ask you this. So do you still play tennis tournaments?
I play on teams. I play league tennis, so this past season I was on 5 teams. But I have to tell you my best story. I have to tell you my
Okay.
best story. I
Okay.
played in the Lady Nelson Golf Cup this weekend at the Four Seasons, and my partner and I, the first day we came in first place. No, it was a shamble, and they had quotas. And I'm not a huge golfer. I just golf occasionally, but we thought we were the worst team, and it turns out we were the best because it said +3, and I was like, oh, we really stink. And everybody else was like minus, but it turned out we were actually in the lead. So the second day we tied for first place, which was the final day. We tied for first place in our flight. I don't see this is competitive, Vicki. So tied for first place, but then they did the scorecard by the back nine as we came in second. And, competitive me was like, dang it, I wanted to be
Oh,
first.
oh, that is
But I'll be going to
fantastic.
the spa with my gift card.
Boy,
So
talk about energizing. I bet that was just incredibly energizing weekend. Oh my God. Yes, I did say I want to get on the tennis court with you, but not in a competitive way. I don't know if I could return your serve, but I want to do that
you'd
one day.
have
So
fun.
that's on
We
my
just
bucket
have fun.
list, Vicki. So just so you know. Okay.
Let's make it happen.
All right. So, okay, last question. And this question is like one of my favorite questions. Vicki, 10 years older, she's knocking at your door and you are going to get up and go answer that door. What's she going to tell you?
Enjoy every precious moment with your family. Enjoy my parents, right? 88 and 91. Don't miss a moment of your children's lives. Get that job where you have a little bit of flexibility so you can make sure work for that company that'll say, you know what, that's important. It's important for you to be there for your children's recital or their children's play or whatever it may be. I think all those things, even now, I have to sometimes go, now slow down and remember what's the most important thing, right? And that is your family. So,
I love that.
yeah,
Enjoying the moments, embrace the moments.
uh,
And I think you're
absolutely.
right. Once we get into that unraveled season, we reflect and we're like, you know what? That's important. That's important. That's not important. That's important. You take the not important off the table. And a lot of times we don't know that earlier in our careers. We're just trying to make it happen. And we
I
don't
was.
realize the not important stuff that stuff will work itself out. So, well, listen, you're definitely living life in leadership lane. I appreciate you coming on and just sharing your perspective. This has been so much fun. If someone is listening and they
Mhm.
said, you know what, I want to connect with Vicki, or I heard something she said and I want to learn more, how is the best way for someone to connect with you?
Absolutely. Email is the best way for sure, because I'm always on the phone, so it's tough to reach me on the phone, but email is definitely the best way, and it's a very long email. I'm going to get that changed. Vicki Rose and Associates, it's Vicki Rose Associates with an S at gmail.com. Best way to reach me, of course, LinkedIn. You can always find me
Mhm.
on LinkedIn. I check LinkedIn constantly. I use it as a recruiting tool, of course. So I'm always on there. And of course, I do have a website, but I recommend that you go straight to my email because I check that multiple times a day. Yes.
I
And of course,
will
my phone number is listed there too. So
I will put your email in the show notes as well as your LinkedIn
okay.
link, so someone could connect with you. And I always like to say, if you're going to connect with one of our guests and you want to connect with Vicki, be sure and put a note in there that, hey, you heard her on the podcast, and tell her something that you heard, and it makes that connection. Like it's the start, right, of the building of the relationship. But again, I appreciate you coming on the show. I've learned a lot today. I've known you for a long time, and I've learned a lot. And I've always admired you and respect you, and I appreciate you so much, and I appreciate our friendship.
Thank you so much, Bruce. And I feel the same way about you. And I think you are an incredible person. I really do. And all the things you do, I don't even know how you have time to do your regular work. You're amazing.
I
And I
appreciate
hope you
it.
have a great time at the national conference too.
Well,
I think
thank
that's
you. I can't wait
excellent.
to share all the information when I get back, and I can't wait to share this show. So, hey, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Bye bye.